Just a note before we start. Our show talks about touchy subjects that may be difficult for some of our listeners. Take care of yourself. If you feel you need to seek help, see the links at the end of our show notes for resources.
Hey y'all, and welcome to Touchy Subjects Podcast, the podcast that aims to break the silence that tends to come with conversations around domestic and sexual violence. I'm Sean.
And I'm Amanda.
And today we're going to be discussing healthy communication with our special guest, Raffi Bilek. So thank you for joining us today, Raffi.
Howdy, thank you for having me.
We're glad to have you, especially on conversations around healthier communication, because it is such a vital piece to our relationships. But before we jump into this conversation, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Hi, I'm Raffi Bilek, and I do a lot of work with couples and with situations of abuse, which is not always the same thing. I do couples counseling, but not where abuse is present. That's generally a bad idea. I do run an abuse intervention program for domestic violence offenders, and I've done work with victims in the past. So I know the territory a bit and where the lines are and how we can help folks in different situations.
I will also say I'm just glad to hear the couples counseling, but not with abusive relationships, because I'll hear that sometimes from people. I'm like, that doesn't work.
Yeah, it's not always so clear cut, but when you definitely have a situation where one person is deliberately trying to abuse the other, then couples counseling probably won't help that.
Yeah, especially when abusers are always looking for more ways to gain power over their victims. And
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let me tell you, the tools of therapy can be used to whack somebody over the head real good.
yeah, I do love when I do trainings too with people, and I'll get every now and then so you're teaching people how to be abusive, because I'll say what I do. I'm like, no, I'm just giving a bunch of abuse tactics and how they. I guess technically, yeah, I'm teaching people how to be abusive if they're listening and
Yeah,
want
I've
to.
thought about it. If I really wanted to mess with my wife, I really have a good list of tools I could
Oh,
use.
yeah.
I know a lot of them. Yeah.
Absolutely. We were just talking before this. I easily know how to gaslight people. We were talking
Yeah.
how I gaslit my friend to believing I couldn't hear him while playing Call of Duty for 40 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Not hard.
Got the tools. But we are here to talk about healthy communication, Raffi.
It's better. That's better than gaslighting.
Yes. So when it comes to healthier relationships, communication is key, because that's how we're going to be able to navigate our relationships in a healthy manner.
Yeah.
But why is it that healthy communication can be difficult for some people, and why is it so vital?
Well, that's two very large questions. Let's tackle it one at a time here. Why is it hard? Well, I live in my own world. I was born in my own skin, not in yours. And we all tend to think that the way that we see the world is the way the world is, and the way everybody should see the world. So there's a lot of things that I just never bother to think that I need to tell you, because it ought to be obvious. You should know what the right way is to do this, that, the other. You should know how to load the dishwasher the right way. You should know what things you say are hurtful. You should know how I feel about them. And it takes a level of maturity to understand that's not the case. And you see that because little kids don't get that. Little kids do not even understand that you can't necessarily see them. So they'll be on the phone and they'll nod their head in response to something you ask them, because they just don't get there's another perspective other than theirs. And the work of maturing is realizing, oh, there are other perspectives, and most of them are just as valid as mine. They're just different. And it's very hard to do that. And it's not necessarily something that happens for everybody on the spot naturally. We have to think about those things. We have to go through that process of growing and understanding. I have to tell you what's in my heart and in my head for you to get it. And since I don't think that, I don't bother to do it. And then we're alone and isolated from each other.
I nod my head on the phone all the
Okay,
time.
well, you may be a totally juvenile person there, and you might be hopeless. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I definitely.
Okay, yeah, but you see, but that's an indication that we're all still there, meaning we all still feel like the world revolves around us. That is true and normal to a degree. We are all egocentric, and it takes work to say there is somebody else here. I'm in a relationship with somebody else, and I need to be concerned for them, think about how they see things, and communicate with them. So I understand how you see it. You understand how I see it. That is not a given.
Yeah. It's one of the things I think is the most challenging for people, is recognizing that our lived experiences are not all people's lived experiences. So
Right.
how we've learned to do things isn't how other people are going to do it. The dishwasher, for example, I load a dishwasher completely differently than what my partner does.
Right.
And it infuriates me sometimes just seeing like all the like everything being separated. I'm like, you could
Are you
put so
times
many.
up or times down?
Oh, down, completely down.
Right. This is a big fight in couples counseling. I've seen this a lot. Tines up or tines down. Because if you put the tines up, you might stab your fingers on them, but it gets cleaner. If you put it tines down, it's safer, but it's all smushed together in there. This is a big concern for a lot of people. It's all about communication. It's all about communication.
I love that that's one of the things that come up a lot too.
It's the new toothpaste, right? It used to be like, squeeze the toothpaste from the top or the bottom. I don't hear that a lot, but a lot of people get into it about the dishwasher.
Oh, I'm a psychopath apparently because I just squeeze the toothpaste tube from the middle.
Yeah, that's a problem. We gotta get some help in here for this guy. Let's.
But it's the dishwasher is like a minor example of it, but it's like because we all have our own lived experiences, and we make the assumption that other people have those. We're lacking that ability to communicate about it because we just immediately go to, well, this is what everybody knows.
Right.
And
This is the way it's supposed to be done.
yeah.
Yeah. How do you not know this? Because it's just common sense.
Right.
Yeah. So if we're running into that then, where let's say I just assume that things should be done a certain way, and because that's how I've been taught or how I've learned to do them, how can I start to recognize that in myself so that I can work on having a healthier communication with those I'm in relationship with?
So I think the help me understand mindset is pretty critical. Those are my three most important words in marriage. I love you. Very nice. Very nice. I was wrong. That's important. But I think the three most important words are help me understand. Something is not going right here, right? Like you consistently put the forks down despite my having explained to you that that is incorrect. So help me understand. Why is that? Instead of telling you that's not right or getting mad at you or assuming that you were doing it deliberately because you don't care about me, my position should be help me understand. Why do you do it the way you do it? Why do you, want to sleep on your side when I've told you that sleeping on your back is healthier? I'm making that up. Why do you insist on doing it this way? Why do you say this? Help me understand those things. Instead of assuming that I understand the reason or that there's no reason or that you're stupid, most people do things for a reason. And if I come from a place of help me understand that, then it opens me up to being able to exchange ideas and experiences and better understand and communicate with each other.
Yeah, that statement to help me understand is also helpful just in all of our relationships, not just our dating relationships
Of
too,
course, absolutely.
because we all have different perspectives on things. So if we're able to try to be willing to understand why someone else is coming from this in a certain way, it might be able to also help us be able to not only better understand them, but better understand what we need to do if, for example, like I'm as an educator around domestic and sexual violence prevention, if somebody is coming at me with information that I disagree with wholeheartedly, because I know in prevention work, these are the root causes of this. But if they don't see that and they're telling me this is why I believe this, I now have a better understanding of how I can work to educate them to eventually get to the point where they have that better understanding of what prevention might look like.
Right.
Be-
You also may better understand where they're coming from to help them better. Some people are not open to your education, right?
yeah,
When somebody challenges you because they've been through that, right? And, if you're trying to educate a survivor of sexual violence about what sexual violence is about or what, you may not get anywhere. They may not be in a place to hear you because they're suffering from their own pain. And when you can understand that, you can engage with them more effectively. It may not be about educating them at that point. It may be about connecting, empathizing, supporting, and education may have to wait if they're not in a place to hear it.
yeah. Sorry, Amanda, you looked like you had something there. So
No, I'm still caught up on you said the word communication ship earlier, and I know it was just like your tongue like
My tongue
messing
moves
up.
a lot faster than my brain.
same.
It was Sean. Sean said it. Communication ship seems like actually like a word we should coin now. I'm gonna I'm gonna
Yeah,
start that.
It,
let's
ma-
get
it, ma- it makes me think of like, hey, let's all hop on the communication ship. But that's not how you're thinking of it. No.
no, but let's trademark this real quick because working for a nonprofit, I could
Finder's
use
fee.
some
Finder's fee.
royalties. Dang it. Got the dibs call. So this is also something that's really difficult for people too, is that help me understand aspect of it when, for example, I'm coming from this as a professional, right? I in this regard, let's say, for example, like in this regard, I know better, right? I have all the knowledge, I have all the background, I've got the data to support what I'm saying. But when someone's coming at you and or they're talking to you or trying to communicate with you, and you know what they're saying is completely wrong, how is it, how can we get to a point where we're more empathetic to what that person is saying to be able to communicate with them healthily so that way we're not potentially shutting that person down or completely sabotaging or ruining this relationship?
Okay, so let's narrow this down for a second to
Mhm.
an experience that many people have, which is I'm telling you that this is the right answer, right? You know, you're a professional, but this happens in relationships all the time. You know, let's say I am a nephrologist, it's a kidney doctor, right? And we're talking about something kidney related. This is a terrible example. It's going totally in the wrong direction. The point is, I'm sure about this kidney issue that you're arguing me on, right? So everyone has had this experience of I'm trying to tell you what's right and you're not listening, and we get into an argument and it's terrible. The answer is you're just not interested in hearing my facts until you know that we are in connection. There's a quote attributed to Teddy Roosevelt: nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Right? Nobody is listening to me about my nephrology knowledge. That's a great nephrology knowledge. Nobody is listening to me about that until we are in connection. And so if your partner or your friend or your coworker does not want to listen to you, let's understand what's happening. They are experiencing something. They are having some kind of feelings that are preventing them from wanting to hear you. And it's not because you're right and they're wrong and all these things. Well, you know, I had a friend who, you know, her father was a doctor and was very so he forced on her a lot of procedures and like this checkup and that checkup, and so it felt in a sense there was some abuse going on there, and so I would imagine that if someone would try to tell her what she needs to do about her health, she would be very reactive to that because she has an experience with it and it hurts a lot. And so it's often not about what is correct, but it's about what is real for me. And that's where help me understand comes in. If I can understand where you're coming from and why you react the way you do, and I care about that, I'm not just trying to get rid of that. Oh, well, you know, that's not happening anymore. You know, I'm not your father, so move on. Like, no, wow, that really sucks. I can understand why when I tell you you need to go get a physical, that really, pushes your button. And we just make space for that and we live with that. And now we are in connection. And what happens, the actual result is less important than the fact that we have a good relationship that lasts.
Yeah, if you might not be able to get that information out right now
Yeah.
and have them understand it, but if you have the connection, if you have the relationship that's going to last, you have more opportunity to have that information come out. Like
If the goal of your life, if the goal of your life in your marriage is to be right, you might succeed at that, but be very lonely. Right there in a long-term relationship, there are many things that don't get solved quickly or at all. And if you'd like to remain in connection, then being able to communicate, empathize, and make space for each other is important. If you'd like to be right and give up all those things, you can do that. But Rightville is a very lonely place.
And one of the things you said in there too, Raffi, that I really want to kind of highlight for people is what is real to them or what is real to me. Because this kind of goes back a little bit to like what our perceived experiences or like what our experiences lead us to believe about things anyway. But if something is real to me, that is the truth that I have. So no matter what someone is saying, unless I know that this person has my best interests at heart or is willing to have a conversation with me, if they say something counter to my truth, that is potentially, especially depending on like what it is, could be potentially like world shattering for this person
Sure.
because what they've experienced is what they know to be true. It's a conversation I have all the time when I'm talking about biases and stereotypes because like they're rooted in some truth because if they weren't,
Yeah.
they wouldn't be able to exist. So if that is my truth that I'm holding, I have to trust somebody else enough to allow for that communication to happen to then be able to say, okay, maybe what my truth is isn't the whole truth or the truth for everything, but I have to care about this person or know this person cares about me first before I'm willing to hear that.
Sure. Yeah. And I think it's important for people to understand there's a distinction between what you see as the truth and what we are going to do, right? If my truth is that the car is breaking down and we got to get the transmission replaced, and your truth is no, everything's fine, like we have a problem. I do not want you going off the side of a cliff because the car's not working. But it's not going to help me to argue with you and tell you that this sound means that that's going wrong. And I looked it up. First, I have to understand what's bothering you. Like, why is it that when I say it's broken, you are resistant and you get angry at me and all these things? Like, what's happening for you? Well, my father always telling me this, or I'm nervous, I don't know about car, whatever it might be that you're experiencing. Okay, let me understand that. And then once I understand you and you understand me, then we can go look at what is actually happening with this car and do we need to fix it? Because we cannot make, there are many decisions that cannot be made based on my truth or your truth. We have to figure out, like, do we have to fix the car? That's a dangerous situation. But it's different from you seeing things in a certain way and me seeing things a certain way and being able to hold those at the same time until we get to a place where we can decide, okay, what actually needs to happen here.
It's one of the interesting like points of like communication between my partner and I is like we both grew up in kind of like different places, like financially, right? Like my parents experienced a bankruptcy, like we had our house foreclosed. So, like my partner has never experienced those things. So my experiences with anything like finance related,
I imagine you're much more anxious about it.
I'm more anxious about it. I will put it off if I can because I'm like, it's not like super important right now. So like we don't need to worry about it. That's why I push my car oil changes for as long as I can. I push getting gas for as long as I can. Like I know when my paydays are, so I know like this is when major purchases happen. Um, so we're in constant communication with each other because they know that, and I know my own like experiences with money. So that way we have that healthy communication around our finances. I also have allowed them to take a lot of the finance stuff where I will often say like, if you think we are in a place to be able to afford it, we can do it.
Cool.
Because I know that's not my strong suit. I know that it's not. If I have any say in it, I am pushing those purchases off as long as I possibly can.
Yep. That's an important piece of healthy communication also is people are different and that's okay. Very important mindset. People are different and that's okay.
Yeah. We don't need to agree 100% on everything, but
You won't.
yeah.
And yet you can still remain in communication in a good relationship.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, so kind of in this wheelhouse or realm where we kind of been sitting for a little while, how do we know when communication is going well? Because it's
Um,
one thing to say we need to have this communication, but how do we know it's actually being effective?
if you understand your partner and feel understood by them, I guess we're on the right track. If you feel like you can discuss with them things that are bothering you, we're on the right track, right? If something goes wrong, they say something, they do something, the day went poorly, and you feel like we can't talk about this or how do I talk about this? We're not on track. You know, I, my family and I yesterday went out to this event in Central Maryland where the Air Force, they had an air show, whatever. We drove an hour to get there and then discovered that the place was totally full and they were not accepting other people. There was 100,000 people there already. And we turned around and went back. And that was a disappointment for everybody. And everyone was kind of snippy with each other. And I felt like, okay, we'll manage this and we'll talk about it later. What went wrong? How do we feel about it, etc. If I am concerned I'm not going to be able to talk about it, I'll be even more grumpy and annoying, and I'll try to get things out on the spot, which doesn't work because we're both angry. So having this sense of confidence that, okay, we can deal with this, that is a good sign and a good outcome of good communication.
So what happens then if, for example, somebody has just this feeling that I can trust my partner, I know I can communicate with them, I just don't want to put that on them. So their block isn't necessarily the not feeling confident in their partner or the ability to communicate with them, but it's their ability to express that themselves.
Meaning, I don't want to burden you with my stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you doing in a relationship? Like a relationship is two people carrying the load together, right? If you don't, I mean, how would you feel if your partner said, "Oh yeah, I'm mad at you, but I don't want to bother you with that"? You'd be like, "No, like, well, tell me. I want to hear it. I want to help. I want to fix things." So why would you do that to your partner? If we are in a good relationship and you believe they can hear it and they want to hear it, so tell them. Don't not burden them because you don't want to put your stuff on them. Like your stuff is their stuff now. If you guys are in this together, your stuff is their stuff and their stuff is your stuff, and we're all carrying it together.
Yeah. It's like when you're like do the typical vows of like what's yours is mine and what's mine is yours, like that kind of stuff. And like it's always like the physical, right? We just when we think about like the physical items or things that we own. But it's like it's everything now. Like it's not just like the car, the house, the TV.
Your
Like
problems are my problem, right? If you've got a tough parent that you have trouble dealing with, now I have that person in my life also, and I don't have the right to say, well, that's not my problem. You deal with that. And let me know when that's over. No, now we deal with your mom, who's a big giant pain in the butt.
And it's not just that. It's our, our health, it's our grief, it's our sadness and joy, everything we start to share. And if you're stuck in that what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine in a physical sense of like our assets and things like that, you're missing this big picture, this big piece of that connection between the two of you. And then if you don't have that connection, you're not going to have that healthy communication, right? That's
Yeah,
kind of where we're going back to here.
totally.
yeah. And if you can't trust that you can say these things to your partner or talk to them when things are coming up, because it's eventually going to happen. You're going to have a harder conversation at some point with someone that you're in a relationship with.
Yeah.
But if you don't trust that you can have that without that person like reacting poorly or not hearing you out in that sense, like then you probably don't have a healthy relationship to begin with.
Needs work.
Because trust is like your baseline. And if you feel like you cannot trust, you don't have the trust that you can share this information with your partner, there's something there that's making that relationship unhealthy.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that it's broken or unfixable or unworkable. Every relationship takes work. I've seen these things out there that like, if it's taking work, you're not doing it right. Like that's totally wrong. Like every relationship is going to take work.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
yeah,
those things always make me laugh because I'm like, apparently you have never actually been in any kind of like committed long-term relationship because
Right.
shit's
Because
not easy. Like,
well, people are basing it on the first, 3 months, which are wonderful and like, cloud nine, everything's great. And then once, things settle into the long term, yeah, it gets tough and it's supposed to. Right? Again, your world is not my world. Trying to get those to fit together is going to be challenging. That is the norm. That is expected. And if you're not working at it, you're not going to get anywhere good.
yeah. And it's also just ignoring too that people also grow like as they get older too. Like you're going to have things about you that are going to potentially change. And if you're able to communicate with your partner and you have a healthy relationship, you can communicate about those things and to continue to develop and build on that relationship. Now also like eventually there could just be a natural end, right? Like the two of you grow, like it's just like, really, this isn't working out anymore. Like that happens, that's fine too. But relationships do take work. Like you're not gonna be in a long-term relationship and say like I never had to put in any work. It just kind of was. Like that's not how that goes.
Nope.
So when we're talking about then the potentially like unhealthy relationship or that inability to communicate, um, where is really that kind of line, right? Where maybe you are just bad at communicating, but you're not abusive. So it's like if I'm in a relationship and I'm like, I just kind of suck at talking about things, yes, those behaviors lead to an unhealthy relationship, right? Because that lack of communication is going to build an unhealthy relationship. But if I'm willing to and want to fix that to go from unhealthy to healthy, where's that difference between wanting to communicate better and just being abusive or using abusive language?
It's much easier to figure out in yourself, right? If I genuinely want to understand you and I'm willing to make space for the fact that you see things differently and it may not be the way I see things, okay, there'll be lots of problems in a relationship because we're human. But if I really want you, then we can make it change and we can work on it and get some professional help, whatever is needed. If really my only intent is to get you to understand me, and I don't really want to understand. And only you can know. Do I really want to understand you, or do I only want to hear your point so I can make my rebuttal? Do I really care how you see things, or do I wish it were not that way? Am I trying to get that to go away? So if you are trying to get them to see things a certain way, and you are not open to how they see things, and you believe that it should be the way that you want it to be, that goes towards abuse. If you really care and really want to and just kind of suck at it, okay, we can work on that. That's a communication issue. It's much harder to figure out in somebody else. We don't know what's inside some other person. When they say, okay, so tell me what's bothering you, do they mean it, or are they just planning to figure out how to undercut you? And it's hard to know, but if you repeatedly feel undercut, you feel like you can't get your words out, you don't get the impression that what matters to you actually matters to your partner. And again, all the signs of abuse and violence that you guys have sure have talked about on other episodes, the gaslighting, the reversing of positions, the control issues, all those things. Like, yeah, it's hard to figure out when you are in it. But again, I'm sure you guys have talked at length about how to be aware of that and how to address it if it comes up.
Yeah, I think what you're saying here is probably really important for people to start looking within themselves because like you said, I mean, nobody thinks they're the villain in their own story, right? Like we all think that what we're doing is the right way to do it and we're doing it for a purpose. But if you can look inside yourself and be like, okay, am I asking these questions because I genuinely care, or am I asking these questions just because I don't want to deal with the repercussions of you being this certain way, right? Like, what's bothering you? Is it because I want to know what's bothering you, or is it because I want you to stop being crabby and I just need this to end?
Right. Now, often an abuser will say, I'm doing this for her own good, right? Like she's wrong and I'm right. I know what's going on here and she has to do this. So often they might, claim that they care and they do want the best for their partner. But again, being in a relationship doesn't mean I do what you need all the time because you need, like, that's again, being controlling, even for a good purpose, is controlling, right? So allowing you to make your own decision and allowing you to be who you are. Well, but how can I do that? She's going to waste all her money. Okay, but you know what? That's her right, right? So the idea of caring about somebody else is a step in the right direction, but you also have to say, I'm willing to make space for them. I'm willing not to have my needs met in this moment. I'm willing for them to be different. And yeah, like you said, you do have to look inside yourself. Of course, people who have problems of abuse, power, and control rarely do that. And again, that's the work we do in our abuse intervention program, is getting people to try to look at themselves. It's very difficult work. These people are very resistant, very self-protective. It's not easy.
Yeah. It's especially when you're trying to like do that like internal reflection of like what are my behaviors? Why am I doing this? What am I doing? Why am I saying things like this? It's really difficult for anybody to do that, let
Sure.
alone somebody who in having been an abuser in a relationship has had a lot of power and control over somebody else. It is
Yeah,
very difficult for people from a position of power to feel like they want to relinquish any of that. So not
absolutely.
only do you have to get them to a point where they are willing to relinquish some of that, but also recognize like, hey, I actually need to change. And those are two very difficult things to do.
Yeah, totally.
And I think one of the things that can be important for people in this is the obviously like listen, like are you listening to respond or listening to hear the person out? But doing that internal reflection of I'm having a hard time. I need to communicate with my partner. My partner, every time I do that, doesn't give me what I need in that moment. That can be when we're looking at the relationship, if we're thinking if we have healthy communication or if we have like we're potentially abusive, if you feel like they've never listened to you or they're always in that mode of, I'm trying to solve this problem, not actually hear you out, there's
That's a
probably
problem.
some communication barrier that is happening in that.
Yeah.
And we just did an episode actually about like kind of like of talking around like masculinity a little bit and where men come from the perspective of we want to be protectors because that's what we're taught to do, right?
Yep.
There's a point when that protection can become a problem, Where
Yeah,
if I'm
absolutely.
listening to somebody because they're telling me something, that means the problem is here. How do I physically fix this problem? Not how do I just sit here and provide them with empathy and provide them like a shoulder to lean on. We've now taken that like protector belief and we're pushing it to where we're not actually listening to the person and what they want. We're just doing what we think we need to do to fix the situation and then move on.
Yeah. Right. It's like, what if the damsel in distress in the fairy tale actually does not want you to rescue her and put you on your horse? Like that's what all the fairy tales do and all the movies and all these things. But like, what if that's not what they want?
I
No,
made
no, we're getting on my horse. I'm saving you. I don't need saving.
I made the joke earlier in a presentation, and because we were talking about healthy relationships, so I listed up a bunch of couples, and someone brought Mario and Peach on the list, and I was like, at what point does Peach is it not kidnapping? Because you can only end up in someone else's castle so many times.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think, like, did they actually have a thing going on? Like, because the last time I was into video game, like, last time I saw them together was in Mario Kart 2 on Super Nintendo. And I don't recall them having a thing. Maybe that's evolved over time with the later Nintendos.
It is always I feel like it's alluded to like I it's like we don't you know maybe in like the animated like TV show there's might be something, but I feel like it's always just like kind of alluded to, which is why you get like Mario and Peach, Luigi and Daisy, like
Yeah, I don't even know who Daisy is. I'm behind the times, folks. I am behind the
s-
times.
basically just the Princess Peach counterpart for
Luigi.
Luigi.
All right.
Well, yeah. So a lot of this has been kind of on like recognizing communication and like, is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? Or how do I make myself potentially get better at it? So if we're looking at wanting to improve our communication, I've done the internal work and realized I'm probably pretty shitty at how I communicate with my partner or communicate with my friends or my family. What are some things you would recommend to them to work on improving their ability to communicate?
Well, the first thing is I would recommend they buy my book. That's the first thing. I think that's how we got connected, right? Because I
The
wrote this
key
book.
to everything.
I wrote this book called The Couples Communication Handbook. The skills you never wanted for the skills you never learned for the marriage you always wanted. So that's where I'm coming from with all of this. And yes, it is an excellent book. You can still learn good communication without it, but it would probably be much harder. So you should just go ahead and buy the book. Um, and again, the help me understand mindset is a really important place to come from. I would say that really the first thing that people need to do in order to get to good communication is chill. Just not now. Good communication is important. It's not important right now. Meaning when something goes wrong, I alluded to this before. Take a break. You don't need to deal with it right away. It's not an emergency. There are very few things in your relationship that are an emergency. If it is an emergency, there'll be a lot of blood. Short of that, you just don't need to worry about it right now. Take a break, come back to it later. It feels very compelling. No, I have to talk about this right now, but you don't. And, again, once you get better at this, it will be easier to say, you know what? Okay, I'm confident we'll talk about this later. There is a bit of a catch 22, obviously, because you're not good at it now. So you're worried about, okay, fine. Start with take a break, come back to it later. We all know this, that when we're really revved up, it's not a good time to try to talk about the problem. We don't do it well. I think a lot of grief would be saved if people would take a break, come back to it later. The problem will still be there. And if it's not good, so maybe it's gone. Maybe it's not a big deal. You go to sleep, you wake up in the morning, you realize, I was just cranky. It's not a big deal. But maybe it was a big deal. And then you can talk about it better. Very important.
Oh my gosh, this is really great because I always feel like, okay, we need to talk about it right now because right now I'm having all these emotions and like if we put it off for a while, then I'm gonna lose some of my vigor about it, right? And I'm
That's a good
but
thing.
that's a good thing. Like and this is a little bit of a revelation I'm having here right now because
Yeah.
maybe it's not because I just kind of forgot about it. Maybe it's because it really wasn't that important and I was just living in my emotion at the time.
Right. It is very normal to be upset about something that's happening. Okay, they put again, there they put the forks tines down again. Like, is it really that important to your relationship? You could talk about it better later, but it feels very compelling in the moment. Yeah, 100%. Don't do it then.
Yeah. And I think like the flip side of that, Amanda, is like for me, if I don't have this conversation right now, I'm dwelling on it. Like it's going to be the only thing I think about until we have that conversation. And that's also not healthy.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, got to work on that because that's not really the way the world works, right? If you have something to talk about with your boss and they're not available, there's no choice, right? So working on your dwellingness is an important thing because you may not be able to get what you want in the moment in many places in life, right? So in this case, you could force your partner to talk about it, but I'm suggesting that really won't do you much good.
yeah. So when we're looking at that first step, right? We'll say we've taken the break. Now I want to talk. Now I want to talk about it.
Right.
How do I know, or how do I make sure that when I am expressing something to my partner, that I can make it, or I can be better at communicating with them before I'm potentially just going to say something that just shuts the whole thing down?
Right. So again, there's definitely ways to approach it and ways not. Once we are in a place to talk about it, we're calmer, we are more in control of ourselves. So let's cut this conversation in half, and I'm going to speak and you're going to listen, and then vice versa. We're not both going to share our perspectives at the same time because that very quickly turns into a ping pong match. Right. So having a talking stick, whether literal or metaphorical, is important. We're gonna just step into my world for a bit, and I'll tell you how it looks to me, and you'll hear me out, you'll understand it, and then we'll switch. If we are both going to try to share our perspectives at the same time, that's called an argument. That does not help us very much. No, the car is broken. No, it's not broken. Yes, did you hear that sound? There's no sound. I mean, we've all been in those many times before. If instead we say, okay, here's how I see it, here's how I feel about it. Let me help, let me help you understand the way it looks to me. I'm trying to share with you the way the world looks to me, and you're trying to see it through my eyes just for now. You don't have to agree with me. You just have to get that that's the way I see it and care about that, right? If I am worried about the car making its noise, you will not help the situation by Googling it and convincing me that that's not a problem. You will help the situation by saying, you know what, I can understand why that noise is worrying you. If you understand what I'm going through and you care about it, then we are going to get much farther than if we argue about who's right and who's wrong. I talk about it many times in the book. It comes up. You've got to drop the right and wrong. It doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. It's not going to get us anywhere. Again, we've all been in these arguments where we're trying to figure out who's right and I'm right and you're right. We argue over and over. And then maybe you find out in the end who's right and who's wrong. And maybe you feel a little bit vindicated and they feel terrible. And we don't have any better relationship. All that happened is you were right. Like I said before, Wrightville is a very lonely place.
Well, and there's only so many times where somebody can hear like, "Oh, yep, you were right. I should have listened to you before." Like, I don't care anymore that I was right. Why couldn't we have had this conversation before we got to that point, right? Like, we should have talked about whether or not the car was actually broken and figured that out before I said, "Fine, whatever, it's not broken," and then I break down on the side of the highway.
Right. Yeah. And that will happen more easily again if we abandon the argument up front about whether it is or it is not a problem. And I hear out what you're anxious about it. I'm worried about the money. Okay, let's figure out, let's understand where we're coming from, and then we can figure out what to do about it. Right? Maybe if you're worried about the money and I'm worried about the noise, so we'll find somewhere to do a payment plan, or we'll put it off another week or whatever it's going to be. But we can't solve that. You cannot solve a problem that you don't understand. And so often we try to do that. I think here's the problem, so I'm going to try to solve that. But I don't know what you think the problem is. So we're not solving anything. And so many couples come up with these solutions that don't actually fix the problem because we haven't gotten to the problem.
Mm-hmm. I think thinking about that too, just in in the sense of the work that I do, right, around prevention of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, we understand the root causes are power and control, right? That is the root cause of violence. But if my audience is not in that place, right, where I say power and control, okay, what does that mean to them then? Because I'm taking that all the way back to like sexism, racism, homophobia, because that's kind of where all that's stemming from. But if my audience isn't at that spot, I can't talk to them about those things. I have to meet them partly where they're at to help eventually get there.
You do have an advantage in that position because often in that situation, people are coming to you as the expert and they're already open to that. But if you find yourself in a position where you are not invited as the expert, you're at a cocktail party and you start talking about this, then you have a much bigger job of understanding where they're coming from before you start in.
Yeah. Yeah. So question then on like the flip side of this, right? So like we said, like we took the time to break out, like separate for a little bit, and then came back to conversation that we were trying to have or the potential thing that made us angry or upset. How does this differ though when someone just tends to try to use the silent treatment? Like they use this as an opportunity to say like, okay, we'll just take a break on this. We'll come back to it later, and they just never
Yeah.
come back to it.
Oh, absolutely. Again, you like any other tool, you can use this for abuse in a great way. Like, no, sorry, timeout, right? By the way, I want to tell you, you're a big fat jerk. Oh, timeout, bye, I'm going. Like, there's lots of ways that you could screw around with this, and just make it into another tool of abusing your partner. If you are coming at it with good faith, I want to talk to you, I want to understand you, I want to come back, it's great. If you are doing this with the intent to try to get away with something, okay, I'll pretend to care so that really I can get my opinion out. Like, great, you'll be in the same place. It's not going to work, and yeah, it tends towards abuse.
Yeah, and I think that's the one of the important pieces in here is that if you are willing to have the conversation and want to have the conversation, but there are just pieces that you're not super great with, you probably are in a relationship that can be teetering on like the healthy unhealthy. That doesn't mean it's abusive because you have the desire and want to have a healthy relationship with your partner and have that healthy communication. You just might not have all the tools. And that's very different than somebody making the choice to use these behaviors as a pattern to gain that power over them.
Right. Again, it takes some introspection, it takes some honesty with yourself. Um, and it's a lot easier to figure out for yourself than it is to figure out if someone else is doing it to you. And I think that, we touched on this question of, finding that line between abuse and just communication struggles.
Mhm.
And I don't think there's a clear answer, right? I think that
Yeah.
we are sort of pointing out where you can look and what you can do. If you're worried that your partner's doing it to you, again, I'm sure you've talked at length, like what do you do when you think you might be in an abusive relationship? Definitely getting some consultation, some support, which of course is hard if somebody is trying to prevent you from doing that. By the way, that's a good sign. If someone's trying to prevent you from getting help, that's a good sign that something's not right. That's not a communication issue. But if people want to get better at communication, that is possible. The fact that you want to get better at it is a good sign, right? Most people who are abusive want you to get better at it. You need to work on yourself. You go to therapy. It's not my problem, right? If you are considering, maybe I have an issue that needs to be worked on already, that's a good indication you're probably not being abusive. Not a guarantee, but it's a good indication. If you are willing to change how you do things for somebody else's sake, that's a good sign.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's something that comes up in a lot of the presentations that I do too is like we're all going to make mistakes, right? Like no one's perfect 100% of the time. I know there's been times where I've been a poor communicator in my relationship. I know there's been times where I've done things in my relationships that probably would teeter on like the unhealthy behaviors, right? But it's recognizing that that was something that I don't want to do because I don't want my partner to feel like I'm devaluing them in any way. I want them to think that I care about them and want to be in this relationship. So learning from my mistakes to not make those mistakes in the future or wanting to learn how to repair or fix those behaviors, that's the sign that you're
That's a good
probably,
sign.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, Rafi, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. I always love having these conversations, especially when I can get like more in like specifics versus just the general broad strokes that we often have to paint in. So, thanks so much for joining us. But before we sign out, is there any other tidbits you would like to let our audience know?
Look, I could talk about this for a long time. I think that, what I say in the book also, if you take away one thing, it's take a break. Don't do it now. It's so off. Like so many people are decent at communicating, just not when they're ramped up. Um, Take a break, come back to it later, chill yourself out. It'll do a lot of good. So I think that's what I want to leave people with. Anybody who wants to see the rest of the book can definitely do that. Highly recommended. You can get the first 2 chapters for free at thecommunicationbook.com. Thecommunicationbook.com. So you can find it for sale there. But yeah, if people want to check it out, if people like hearing me talk, I've got the audio book. There's 7 hours and 29 minutes of Raffi Bilek talking. You can get the 2 audio chapters there free also. So I hope it'll be helpful to people. And I hope that I can have an impact on, just improving relationships all over.
Awesome. And I'll make sure I link that in the show notes of the episode if anyone does want to check that book out, as well as a link to where they can purchase the book if they would like to. And since you kind of already stole my thunder a little bit on it, thanks. Where can they find you on social media if they want to follow you?
So I am on Instagram as the.marriage.mentor. But if I'm old enough not to know who Daisy is, I'm also old enough not to really be awesome with social media. So you'll find it there. I got some quotes and videos and things going on there. That's a good place. But reaching out to me, probably best. There's you can contact me through the website. I use old-fashioned email much better than I do Instagram.
Awesome. Well, I will
Hey,
link
Sean,
your
do you know what Mario's overalls were made of?
the denim.
Denim, denim, denim.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yes.
I'm I love a good dad joke. I love good puns, so I really appreciate it. But again, thank you so much for joining us today, Raffi. It was wonderful to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for listening today. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Touchy Subs Pod to keep up to date when we have new episodes and other content coming out. Please email us any questions, comments, or concerns to touchysubjectspodcast@gmail.com. And please rate and follow us on your favorite podcast listening app. It really does help the show out.
And in the meantime, don't be afraid to challenge, ask, and discuss when it comes to touchy subjects.